I know. I've only heard that a gazillion times. Now, there tend to be three fundamentals. How many of you have been in real estate for 10 years or longer? Okay, about a third of the group. Okay, I got into real estate in 1979. The rhetoric was around then. It's just as true as ever you can be, is with all your tech babble and e-commerce and social media. It's all wonderful and amazing. It's transformed the world. But the human condition hasn't changed that much. When the average consumer goes to sell their principal residence, you have investors, but for our discussion today, we're talking about typically consumers wanting to sell their own principal residence. When they go to sell this asset on the professional market, they want to achieve three fundamentals. Now, this rhetoric's been around until some of us are tired of hearing it. It's not language skills, it's just absolutes. I'll start you off. This homeowner wants to get top dollar, maximum value, and they want it done in a reasonable time frame. Anybody remember the third part of the rhetoric? Yeah, you're pretty much right. No stress. So the idea being they want to get maximum value, reasonable time frame, fewest headaches, stress, hiccups involved in the process. That's the flavor of the message that you're putting forward. So obviously you've got all this heavy competition in your market area. You've got two typical scenarios. You've got where you could have that you, being a professional, have provided great service to a current client. After you've put a transaction together, you ask for referrals from the client while they're still in love with you, saying, were you happy with the service? Yeah, you did a great job. You know anybody else wanting to sell in the near future? They say, oh, our friends the Johnsons. Oh, do you mind if I call them and mention your name? No, we'll be glad to give you a good reference. So when you call the Johnsons, allude to the Browns, is it a warm call or a cold call? It's a warm call because you have that psychological bridge. You're being referred and pre-sold by somebody that they know and trust. Even that dynamic, that scenario is rife with its own little challenges. But for the sake of this morning's discussion, we're going to go with the more typical example that there is no one-up advantage. You don't have somebody the owners know vouching for you. We're talking about you working a geographic pocket. You've been pamphleting, knocking on doors, you've been schlepping around with your open house signs. You've been kicking around this little geographic pocket for a period of time. And lo and behold, one day you get a call in on the Monday from someone you've never met saying, yeah, we live in the area, we get your pamphlets, we've seen your signs, we're going to be selling, we're thinking of selling, we're currently in the process of doing our due diligence, we're just interviewing different brokerages, want to hear what services you have to offer. By the way, what's your commission rate? So this is how they sometimes bark it. They'll bark that at the end of it, and they're quite aggressive in tone. Now they could say that, they maybe won't. But the idea being that, I want to be clear about this. The one scenario is where you have somebody vouching for you, you've got that psychological bridge. This is the more challenging type of context where there is no one-up advantage. You're ostensibly on equal playing field. Now sure, it could be the way I described where a homeowner calls in and says, yeah, we're thinking of selling, we're interviewing different brokerages, and that's what they say, and then when you come over, they sit down, they talk to you, they pick your brain for services and price, and they kick you to the curb and go with their niece or daughter-in-law who's in real estate all along. But barring that calamity, let's just say it's exactly the way I've just described it. It's just a consumer living in the Oshawa area wanting to sell, and they're doing their research because they don't seem to know a realtor in particular. Is everybody okay with what I've described? Now in that context, it's not an exact science, the National Association of Realtors, largest organization in the world for organized real estate, National Association of Realtors, determined many years ago, and it hasn't changed much, that in that context, that typical consumer would want to interview a certain myriad number of companies on average before taking action going out on MLS. So what do you think? Generally speaking, in your market area, what does your gut instinct tell you? That if there's no agenda and there's no favoritism and somebody's just doing their own research, they would cut their teeth on probably talking to how many different brands?
Maybe 3.
Yeah, it takes about 3. Now you could have it in some cases where you could have a very easygoing, laid-back, cavalier attitude for some homeowners who meet with one real estate practitioner, and then homeowners are easygoing and listens and suitably impressed and says, sure, where do I sign? They sign MLS and it goes out on the market. Conversely, you could have another homeowner who's so anal retentive and from Missouri, they want to talk to 7 different companies. But the median average tends to be several, about 3. But here's the first reassuring part of the morning, ladies and gentlemen. Based on that scenario, if this is you, and here are the other 2 wannabes, and you're all on equal footing, and you're all vying for the listing, the piece of business, you're to be judged by this would-be client, this decision maker. At the end of the interview process, if this is you, and here are the other 2 wannabes, do you based on subjective perception of the one who's paying the money, do you have to be this much better than the other two vying for the business? Or if this decision maker comes to the subjective conclusion that you're just a shade more innovative and progressive and professional than the other two, you have that competitive advantage or distinct, unique perspective of your selling proposition, if you seem to be more beneficial just by a bit than the other two, do you think the decision makers will probably tip in your direction? You see, I find this greatly reassuring. If I was standing up here and espousing the philosophy that real estate sales in your market region, you had to be the end-all and be-all perfection personified, practically walking on water, they're looking for the sandals on your feet. That's pretty daunting, because who could live up to it? But to think in real estate sales, kicking around anywhere in North America for your pocket region, you just have to be a bit more impressive than the next person, and you'll make 10 times the money. I don't usually use sports analogies, but when you look in professional baseball, an average player who gets paid a very nice living, by the way, but an average player, for every 10 attempts up at the plate, how many times out of 10 attempts at the plate do they actually hit or contact the baseball in any fashion? What would be the stat?
25%.
Yeah, about 2.5 times out of 10. That idea? Yeah, but the idea being that the superstars in that profession who get paid 10 times the salary, all these $1 million endorsements for advertising, heroes, beacons of hope for millions of children. So the superstars in baseball, how many times out of 10 attempts at plate do they actually hit the ball? Yeah, 3.5. Just to make it simple, I'll just round it out. 2.5 to 3.5, say roughly. So that means that the superstars in that industry who get paid 10 times the money are just a bit more proficient with talent, skill, to be able to hit the ball one more time out of 10. But that still means the superstars are failing 6 times out of 10. There they are, the superstars, these heroes, swinging and hitting air, embarrassing themselves in front of millions of viewers. And they're saying, you get paid $32 million a year, that's the best you've got. Meanwhile, if you fail to get the listing, sitting there in a bungalow, at least you're only embarrassing yourself in front of 2 sets of eyeballs. So I find that pretty reassuring. Okay, you're not being embarrassed to the masses. So we're going to talk about how to have that competitive edge. We're also going to talk about what the superstar top realtors do, not just indigenous to your area, anywhere I go around Ontario. The story is the same. I'll be blunt, the top superstar agents hated the Wild West that we had for the years when it was a hyperactive market, where you just put a sign on the lawn and have a fire extinguisher to put it out because 17 offers would come in. The top agents hated that scenario or that environment, that climate, because they didn't have bragging rights about an effective story. The homeowners would pretty much go with anybody. You go with a trained chimp, put a sign on the lawn, you get multiple offers. So no, in this case, now that we have a more balanced market, then now the top people are coming back and telling their story again, and we're going to share with you what that is. So, just make sure we're all on the same page. You're all with the same great company. The call comes in on a Monday. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson saying, we live in the area. We're interviewing different companies. I'd like to hear what services you have to offer. What's your commission rate? Now, what effective response could you give? And by the way, the text I sent to Doug, he's giving you the text. You didn't give it to them yet. It's after the fact. You're getting all the text of everything I'm saying, but I don't want you to have it now because it distracts you. What can you come back with as an effective rejoinder over this instrument, knowing all you want to do is secure the appointment? What's your commission rate? So in the humble beginning stages, what would you say back to rally your cause and orchestrate?
As much as I can possibly get. Then we laugh.
Negotiable?
Okay, as much as I can possibly get, negotiable.
It's a great question. One of the things we'll be discussing at the appointment.
Sorry, great question.
It's a
What?
great question. It's one of the things I'll be discussing with you at the appointment.
Okay, now, you've all given nice answers. That's a good, credible textbook answer. Okay, good question. I'd like to talk to you about when we meet. Just, you'll notice as we go through the 2 hours, I'll be going off on tangents, just expounding on a couple of points about sales psychology. When everybody gives you a stall or an objection, you can acknowledge it, and then you come up with your own logical statement, as you just heard. For the sake of your career, for the rest of your commission sales career, I'd like each of you to get into the unconscious or subconscious habit of, in the discourse of conversation back and forth, whenever they give you an objection or a stall tactic, and you acknowledge it, I understand, and say, this is what the answer is, don't just make it a flat statement. always get into the instinctive habit of doing a little tie-down question at the end, steering the conversation where you want it to go. We're asking either a question to compel them to give you a yes, which is what we're looking for in sales, or ask a little tie-down question at the end of your statement, keeping control of the conversation, asking them a pointed question so that they might give you an expanded answer with more information. 70% of selling is listening. You listen carefully to their expanded answer and leaves clues as to how to proceed next with your next persuasive response. In commission sales, do you all see that as you're chatting back and forth, if you don't come out with a tie-down, and it's just a statement with a period, that means at the end of your flat statement, the decision maker gets to, now their turn to talk, and they get to steer it to wherever they'd like the conversation to go. Do you all see in commission sales for the rest of your career, in the discourse of conversation back and forth, understand, here's where you may want to rethink it, you see how that makes sense, or does that sound like a good course of action? Getting them to agree with you, thereby acquiescing and complying with what you've put forward as a proposal, and you're keeping firm control of the situation. Do you all see how by using a tie-down is an effective sales strategy? And that's me asking a tie-down right now to get you to nod and agree with me. So it's a very good answer. A close cousin to that would be, they say, what's your commission rate? Well, I'd have to see your property before I can answer that question. What do you mean you have to see the property? Well, as you know, I work the area. I'm working with buyers. If I come by to see the property suitable for my current buyers, that'd be one commission fee. And if by chance the property is not applicable, suitable for my current buyers, we're talking about my full marketing plan, that'd be a different commission schedule. Do you see how that makes sense? Now, may I come by and see you maybe on Wednesdays later in the week, more convenient? So you're going for the alternative choice. You're saying maybe around Wednesday be all right, or is late in the week more convenient? The decision maker, the recipient feels masterfully in control because they get to pick, but ultimately you're in control because they're only getting to pick what you're offering. We're busy at Bridge Club Wednesday, better make it Thursday. Okay, Thursday, fine, 7, 8:30. And you close for the time frame, the tentative appointment. Now, away from the printed script, when they say we're interviewing different realtors, we would like to hear what you have to offer. You can't always snap your fingers and jockey for position to be in a certain pecking order, but if you had the luxury of just wishing, thinking, okay, it sounds like I'm one of several vying for the listing, if I had my druthers, I'd rather either be the first one in, the middle person in, or the last one in. You can't always do this, but if you try to orchestrate it, saying, oh, really, when are you meeting with the other people? Let's just look at our schedules. If you could jockey for position and go first, middle, or last, do you have a preference?
Last. I like first, in case the first one signs the listing.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
I like this one.
You see, it's fascinating with our discussion because, as you heard, some said last, quite adamantly. A few others were quite strong in tone, saying, no, first. Amazing, nobody ever picks the middle. Okay. Here's what happened in the 70s and 80s. Back when the world was young, we all very much wanted to be last in the old days. And here was the twisted logic. If you were one of 3 real estate practitioners going in applying for the job, the first realtor would come in, sit there, talk to the people, describe services, chat with them, go over things. The homeowners would take some copious notes saying, okay, okay, ask a couple of questions, boot, kick the realtor out. Next night, the next realtor comes in, does their little song and dance. They're asking questions, okay, thank you, boot, kick that realtor out. The third night, the next night, the third and final of the real estate people come in, do their little song and dance, do their presentation. And at the end of the third and final interview, when all the research was finished, and that third and final realtor is still sitting there at the table with them, he or she hasn't left, the decision makers, the 2 partners, would look at the information and turn to each other and say, okay, a couple of subtle differences, a lot of similarities. Well, we finished our research, sign us up. And back in the old days, you'd win by default because you just happened to be there when it live and in person when the research was finished. I guess Woody Allen's right when he says that 80% success is just showing up. We did approach it that way, but then back in the 90s, NAR published a multi-year study that, with all the empirical data to back it up, they tabled this report, which was really beyond refute. They said, and it's all predicated on this, they said that if you are a true professional in sales, you have a good working knowledge of the psychology of selling. And if you can jockey to go first of the 3, you make sure you go in first. And you have a good innate skill, ability of building rapport with decision makers, qualifying what their needs, wants, concerns are, then doing a presentation, painting benefit pictures, providing effective, beneficial solutions to those needs and wants. And then you, the sales professional, know how to ask for the order, the listing, at the end of the presentation in a low-key, understated, non-threatening, consultative manner. Pretty straightforward, right? Based on that skill set, by going first, you have a 70% chance of securing the listing. The other two wannabes don't even get a chance off the bat. Now that's if you've got that skill. If you have never learned the psychology of selling, you jockey to go first, and there you are. This is what happens. You're there at the door, knocking at the door, being first in, and as you knock and ring the doorbell, you're straightening your collar and saying, well, I hope they like me. Let's hope for the best. And you're flying by the seat of your pants. Then you're going to be found wanting or lacking, and the odds are they're going to want to talk to the other two people. The other way I like to describe this, and I don't want to hear any names mentioned, but in your market region, as much as you hate to do so, let's give a nod of respect or due to maybe some top realtors, not teams, but individuals kicking around your market that you begrudgingly have a respect for, saying, boy, they're really good at what they do. Well, if you objectively think that that entity is really good at what they do, and they kick around your market region, and you know everybody's being called off pamphlets, and the odds are they might be called along with you and maybe one other person, do you really want that dynamic, impressive individual going first, where, as somebody mentioned, they'll probably secure it and the other two don't even get a chance? Okay? Now, you're being a polite group, but I taught this about 9 years ago in Edmonton. And thankfully, the fellow didn't say anything at the time in the class, but during coffee break, we're at the coffee table, and he comes lumbering up, waddling up. He's an obese gentleman, really cherubic, round face. He looked like Mike Duffy, the MP, but he wasn't Mike Duffy. And he's just big, round face, sweat pouring down the side of his head. He goes, yeah, that thing about going first, you're wrong. I was going last, I always get it. I said, hey, more power to you, if that's the way you want to approach it. But I like the way this individual pre-assumes that by always taking the sloppy approach of going last of three, I like the way he thinks he's always going to get his shot at telling his story. Pure logic alone dictates that if you continue that pattern of habit, sooner or later, you're going to get some dynamic individual who goes first, just singes their eyebrows, gets them signed on MLS, gets granted permission to phone and cancel the other appointments. If you always take the sloppy approach of going last of three, sooner or later some dynamo is going to be calling you and saying, hey, Harry, I'm here with the Hendersons at Elm. Yeah, we just signed the MLS agreement. I'm just calling to cancel your listing presentation appointment for tomorrow night. You can bring your buyer's shirt out. That's kind of a painful, remember Doug, those are painful phone calls to get.
I never got any, but.
Well, of course not.
Of course not.
So with that in mind, I'd like to think that you could go first, but you can't always jockey for position. The easiest way is say, well, let's just look at our schedule, and when are you meeting with the other people? They say this and this, and then you just try to slot in ahead of time if you feel you have a good story to tell. Now, let me just throw it open to the group. Instead of all canned or memorized language, when the call comes in, we're thinking of selling, when can we get together, and you're chatting about this, you can't ask 20 questions, but what would be a handful, just a few select questions that you'd want to ask, just to flesh out the dynamic of what you're dealing with? Any thoughts?
What are you looking for in an agent?
Okay, what are you looking for in an agent?
Are you meeting with others?
Yeah, okay, are you meeting with others? If they haven't alluded to the fact they are, but yeah, fair point. Anything else? Just grassroots, nuts and bolts.
What's your motives for moving?
Okay, may I ask, are you staying in the area? Why are you selling? Okay.
Pretend you care.
Pardon me?
Pretend you care.
Yeah, pretend you care. What you can pay sincerity, you've got it paid, right, okay, yeah. What was that?
Time frame.
Do you have a time frame when you'd like to be moved by? Anything else? It's not a trick question.
You have a price in mind, I'm sure. You've been watching the market,
Okay, I'm sure you've been watching the market. Do you have a price in mind?
something like that.
Their address.
Yeah, get the address, yes, that would help. So let's say you've hammered out about the time, you've fleshed out, okay, I'm gonna meet with you Wednesday, 7 o'clock, and you've got their phone number because they called in, and you say, can I have your email, because I'd like to send you some information. There's one more key question, I just wanna make sure that you've covered. You could, but there's something even more useful for you, if you can remember to ask this. Some don't even think about asking it.
Do you have lots of money?
Are you the decision maker?
Glad to see you took your facetious pill today, okay,
Will
yeah.
both owners be at the meeting?
Now, did you just hear this? Please repeat it.
Will both owners be at the meeting?
Not just both owners, just say, may I ask, is anyone who's involved in the decision-making process, will all parties be there on Wednesday,
Oh, yeah,
7
that's
o'clock?
important.
Yeah, because I'll tell you something, it's the kiss of death where if you don't make it clear that, is everybody gonna be there? You show up Wednesday and there's the one spouse and the other spouse is conveniently absent, good luck trying to close. So you're saying, are all parties who are involved in this decision-making process going to be there on Wednesday at 7 o'clock? So that's casting that net just a bit more. Now, there's another piece of language, probably ties in nicely to your bailiwick, okay? Are you a Mike Ferry fan?
No, well, I think I've seen them, haven't I?
Okay. Obviously, it was memorable. Okay, there's a line by Mike Ferry, who I consider very aggressive. His strategies don't really work well in Canada. In the US, they don't mind being flat out aggressive. But in all fairness, I just want to throw it out there, cast my bread on the water and get your feedback. In that initial discussion, Mr. Ferry espouses the philosophy, right as you're wrapping up the call. You say, okay, fine. By the way, one final question. When we meet on Wednesday, if you're happy with my services and we come to an agreement on the price to ask for your property, is there any reason or factor whatsoever why you wouldn't list with me that evening?
That way when you pull out paperwork, you don't sideswipe them.
What was that?
That way when you pull out paperwork, you don't really.
Well,
good.
there's
That's
that,
good to get that out.
there's that, but I'm looking for something else.
I don't like that.
No, I know,
They'll be
I warned
pressured.
you up front, it's very aggressive.
They'll be pressured.
Yeah, right
I
away, it's
feel
very
pressured
pressure oriented.
That they'll be, forced to sign, and they would probably call me after an hour and cancel my meeting.
Possibly, yeah. I'm not condoning it or sanctioning it or saying, hey, I like this. I'm floating it as just an example of a piece of language from another training program. In some environments it might work, but talk about going right for the throat. When we meet on Wednesday, if you're happy with my services and we come to an agreement on the asking price for your property, is there any other reason or factor whatsoever why you wouldn't list with me that evening?
I would say that. it
I'm not
also-
saying, I'm not suggesting you use this line. I just want you to be aware of how aggressive some people are out there.
Depends
But
on the people.
also if I,
One at a time? Yeah, go ahead.
if I had 5 other listing presentations to do for that week or that month or whatever, I think I'd be quite aggressive.
So if you're feeling your oats and you really got a head of steam and a lot of business on the go, you can afford to be more
Well, then, yeah,
exacting, okay?
I think it's probably more to do with your interaction with that client.
Mhm.
Have you built a proper rapport with them? Do they like you?
It's a bit
If
ahead of
they
the
like you-
game, isn't it?
Well, if they like you and they trust you, you can ask for anything, at any point.
But this isn't the humble beginning stage. You're just trying to make sure, no, but up front on the phone, some practitioners are making sure they don't waste a second on their most valuable
Okay,
commodity.
on the telephone.
And I'm not condoning it, believe me, I like to come across in an empathetic, diplomatic, consultative approach. Okay, I even hesitate to have shared that piece of language with you, but it is out there. And I just want to be fair where if you take another seminar in the near future and somebody using it, you say, well, why didn't Mike mention that one? I've heard it, I've got to give it its due, but boy, in the Canadian market, it really singes the eyebrows.
I will
Isn't
ask
the
them at
most-
the end of the
Sorry.
presentation,
Yeah.
like, I'll bring the paperwork with me, and at the end, I'll just say, was there any other questions that you have that we didn't touch on? Have I made you feel that that I am competent to do this job for you? I brought the paperwork if you're prepared. If not, then we can do this another time, but I just want to be proactive in case you're ready now.
Okay?
That gives them the option.
Yep, you want to make them feel like they've got breathing room and a sense of autonomy. But back to the phone call. Shh. Back to the phone call. If you fleshed out about, okay, address, email, right, do you have a time frame when you like to be moved by, etc. You also want to say, by the way, when I come over on Wednesday, if you could have any of the paperwork for any bills, utilities, I'd like to be able to review that, and taxes. I'd like to, if you can have that ready, I'd like to be able to review it. Now, when you ask for their email, why are you asking for the email? What are you planning on sending ahead of time between Monday, the call coming in, and Wednesday, going to meet them face to face?
Comparables.
Confirmation.
Not comparables, no.
An introduction about yourself.
Yeah, a bit of an introduction, and we've always seen, here's the funny part, I've taught this for decades, and I know what I'm asking for. You've all basically heard what I'm looking for, but very few of you use it. And then we're gonna get into why. We're talking about sending a pre-listing package. Now have you heard that phrase before? Now, in all honesty, we have 20 people in the room. And if you put your hand up and you're not telling the truth, I'll know by the law of vibration. Let's be honest, think of this as group therapy. Doug's not looking right now. How many of you honestly send any type of a package ahead of time so they can review it before going on the appointment? May I see a show of hands? Okay, sometimes.
I send them to my website. to
Okay, where
see-
they, have them direct them to the website where they
Direct
can
them
see
to the
certain
website.
things.
see
Yeah, that's a
some
good
things,
variation of it.
Testimonials.
Yeah, testimonials, yeah. Okay. Do you all understand what's in a pre-listing package? Okay. you mentioned about testimonials. Okay, testimonials. I want to be crystal clear about this. It's two disparate issues. When you go over on Wednesday night, it's to talk about your marketing plan, how you're going to get them top dollar, show them comparables, go over your commission schedule, a host of different initiatives. But up front, when you say, I'd like to send you some information, or you could push, refer them to your website. When you say, I'd like to just email you some information about my background and credentials, it's really important, please, if you could just take a few minutes to review it before we meet on Wednesday. So you give it a bit of a oomph, a bit of a push, saying, I'm going to just email you something. It only takes about maybe 5-10 minutes to review. It's really important, please, if you can just review that before we meet on Wednesday. Now, by giving that extra oomph of emphasis, some realtors say, well, what, when they get it, would they not just delete it? No, people only buy and sell a piece of real estate, 3-4 times in their life? It's pretty heady business. So if a professional says, I'm going to send you some information, it's really important if you can just take a few minutes to review it. I don't think they're going to hit delete, and if they do, well, you can't control that, but they usually will click it open and take a quick look at it. So when I say testimonials, I know it's a simple question, but what do you think in the form of a testimonial in this day and age with social media? Would you send nice little sound bites that are written out by past clients that were happy? Is there a better way of doing it?
Video.
Video, little video vignettes. This is happening a lot in British Columbia, but here's where we up the ante. Some of you are saying, well, no, in all honesty, Mike, I don't even do a pre-listing package. And now what I'm about to invite you to put together is even more daunting. But if you do what I'm about to instruct you on what to take action, you will make more commission income. So it's on your shoulders. This isn't my subjective opinion. I'm the conduit. I've seen the studies. I've seen the effectiveness, and this is what happens. Let's say you get a call off of the pamphlet, and they say, we see your signs, we live in the area, want to hear about your services, and you take down their email. And then when you get off the phone, you see with your research that they live in a nice little bungalow. What do you do? There. So if you see that the would-be decision maker, your client interview for Wednesday night is in a little bungalow, you want to email them testimonials of 3 or 4 bungalow owners that you've had the pleasure of representing. So when we say, how do you represent that? Every time you get a sale together, and a lot of sellers, consumers are a little shy, they don't like doing video, but if you can manage to get the occasional little video testimonial, after you put a deal together, there's a celebratory drink, you see, you might want to just play around. I appreciate if you can give me a testimonial, but if we can just get a little 15-second soundbite, it's so much more helpful for my marketing purposes. And then they're in a buoyant mood, and they say, okay, what do you need? You get the realtor's assistant to stand out on the sidewalk with their back to the road. No phone, but an actual proper professional camera, a video. And then John and Mary Henderson are standing on the sidewalk with their back to their bungalow, looking toward the road. There's the camera with the assistant, and then in crystal clear focus, they're looking right at the camera. I'm sorry, your first name?
Selma.
Selma? So there you are, Selma, behind them, and as you're slapping the sold sticker on the sign, they're sharp and focused. On the screen it says John and Mary Henderson, Oshawa, Ontario. They say, oh yeah, Selma, yeah, she's the best realtor in town. Boy, this gal got us top dollar. We'd recommend her to anybody. She made the process so easy. So they're all laughing and buoyant, saying that to the camera. As you, the realtor, you're all smiling, waving the camera and slapping a sold sticker on the side. But here's the interesting part. The decision maker getting the video sent to them can see the sharp focus of John and Mary Henderson with their name on the screen. In the background, it's now fuzzy and out of focus, but they can see the vague aesthetic outline of a bungalow. And you can also tell, even fuzzy and out of focus, there's a bungalow in the area. So if you can possibly get enough video testimonials that when you get a call from a bungalow decision maker, you send them a preponderance of 3 or 4 bungalow testimonials. You get a call from a semi-detached owner, you send them 3 or 4 semi-testimonials. Condos are a different matter, just in front of a building. But semi-townhouse, 2-story. Because human nature, if this consumer owns a 2-story double-car garage, 5-bedroom, 2,800 square feet, and then you send her a preponderance of, I've got a great track record of selling all property like yours. Not an array of different ones, but I sell a lot of 2-story, 5-bedrooms, and look at my track record. The intonation is, gee, you must be a specialist in this category. See, RICO, I'm on the board of directors of RICO. You're not allowed to put the word specialist in print. RICO will go right for the throat if you try that, because they'll say by whose criteria. You can have designations, but you can't say I'm a specialist, because we'd all be specialists. But the way to get past that is to send a preponderance of visual ammunition where the intonation is, I sell more bungalows, I'm gonna meet with you on Wednesday, you own a bungalow, I sell all these bungalows in the area. Because the implication is, if you as a consumer, never mind real estate, if you had a medical concern and you could snap your fingers and either go to a GP or a specialist about that medical malady, you'd rather see the specialist. Well, in this case, you're implying, or the inference is, I'm a specialist selling more of your type of real estate than anybody. But I know it's a pain in the neck to get all these videos, so at least in the beginning, if you, each of you can get 3 or 4 videos, say of a townhouse, a bungalow, a semi, and at least send a little collection, a cluster of different video testimonials. It doesn't have to be exact to that property, but at least you're getting a total. Does anybody have any video testimonials that they're sending out now? I can tell you, I can bet money that one of your top competitors is probably employing this little simple strategy. Because it's, well, you be the judge. If you're the consumer and you get an email, you click it open, you just see scanned where it's just little sound bites. Oh yeah, she's really great, she sold us last year and 2016 or whatever it is, and yeah, you did a great job. If you read that, or you saw these human beings on video telling you flat out right to your eyes, obviously the video is more impactful. Okay, now, you could have a letter of congratulation from your broker of record every year saying, great to have you on board, you're such a valuable member of the team. Any award certificates, any type of a discernible track record. Anything that will acknowledge fleshing out that you're a top-notch real estate entity. You're very much pushing forward the benefits of Me Incorporated, of who you are as a real estate practitioner. The gentleman mentioned about comparables. I would strongly encourage you that when you send information ahead, Monday the call comes in, Wednesdays for meeting face-to-face, don't send anything about comparables. You could possibly send them the scanned documents of all the legal documents they'd have to sign. There is merit, I think as you hinted, that if they're meeting with you on Wednesday and then right on Wednesday you bring out all the documentation and they're frightened because they don't even know what they're signing and they get apprehensive, well, a way to assuage that concern is to just send and say, I'd like you to review the documentation before we meet on Wednesday. And by them even taking a cursory glance at it on the screen and then sleeping on it, then on Wednesday when it comes time to sign said document, they feel they've been given a fair chance to review it at leisure, and it can't be that bad of a thing if I had 2 days to look at this thing. So you might want to send the documentation. But the reason you don't send your marketing plan or comparables is that that's the very reason they want to meet with you on Wednesday to pick your brains. The studies show from the National Association of Realtors, and I'm not overstating this, if the call comes in on Monday, you say we'll meet on Wednesday, may I have your email, and you send even a hint about what you're going to do to market the property or comparables in the area, the 2 things they wanted to talk to you about, there's a 40% chance that between Monday and Wednesday, probably even by Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., you'll be paged to the office saying, yeah, cancel the appointment for 34 Elm. Because if they get a hint and you tip your hand as to what they wanted to talk to you about, half the time virtually they say, well, no need to talk to her now, we've got what we wanted. So don't tip your hand. Now, I think I'm saying this in a nice clear voice, right? About how the pre-listing package is all about who you are